We're back on the early edge to talk some Final Four. We got Zach and Mike, and we're joined by the maestro, Larry Hartstein. And Larry, I got to start with you with, this number one seeds thing. And I want to give credit to like the SportsLine model and to a lot of you early edge cappers, because we have the early edge bracket, right, Larry? And a lot of the big time cappers like yourself, like Mike McClure, Tom Casale, were making all the number one seeds get through to the Final Four to a lot of criticism. Like, oh, great, you're just picking chalk. Well, how you like us now kind of thing. I got to ask you, though, Larry, how are you feeling about all the number one seeds making it to the Final Four? Should people be happy about this?
Well, bettors are certainly happy with how it went down last weekend, where all 12 favorites won. So every single moneyline parlay in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight cashed, which was great for bettors and bad for the books. But is it a good thing long term? The ratings so far have been good, but if we keep doing this every year, where only the big money programs, can make it this far, and you can't have a Cinderella, then I think we do lose some of the charm, some of the reason that people who are not big hoops fans tune in at this time of year. But yeah, it's been a cash cow for bettors to just keep riding the favorites. Even Texas Tech, could have pulled an upset. Arkansas could have pulled an upset, and they both collapsed down the stretch.
Yeah, it's true. We could have had a couple of upsets for sure. Mike, I want to ask you, are you happy about this? I do also think this is probably the future, right, with NIL money. And I don't know that it's just the future for college basketball. It might be the future certainly for college football too, because NIL is going to dictate where some of these players go. Your thoughts on number one seeds being in the Final Four?
Yeah, I think it was expected here. We talked about it a lot on this exact show. We talked about it basically projecting it to be extremely chalky. And look, when you talk about the number one seeds, like, are they always going to be this strong? Maybe not. But when you look at some of historical rankings, we've got 4 of like the top 30 teams in the last 25 years. So I personally think that these teams have been, the best teams and deserving. I don't think it ruins things going forward to me, because the first weekend of the tournament is still absolutely elite. You still got the mid-majors, but I do agree with you that it is kind of going to be the new normal, because it's basically every mid-major is going to be a feeder to the elite universities, whether it comes to players, but also coaching staffs, and everyone can just pick up and move at any given time. So it's going to be really hard to build a program in the mid-major range that is not going to get eaten up by everyone else, because everyone there is looking to advance as well.
I think that's the sad part, is the sustainability of mid-major programs beyond a year, because those guys are getting picked off. Zach, your thoughts on these number one seeds making it to the Final Four?
Yeah, this year for sure it was expected, because these teams have taken advantage of the NIL, which is still relatively new. They grew from it, and they took advantage of the window, knowing that UConn wasn't going to be as strong this year. And you could tell based on the odds pre-tournament and in the tournament, teams like Houston and Auburn were the same value throughout the entire tournament. Actually, currently right now, still around the same number. So you could tell right off the bat, these 4 teams haven't lost more than 5 games the entire season. And people have loved it. People love cashing favorites. They love cashing money lines, and that's what we've seen in this tournament. But going forward, I do think it remains the same for the next couple of years, where we're going to see 2 or 3 1 seeds in the Final Four.
If you're a new bettor and you just kind of crashed into March Madness and started betting recreationally, you probably think this betting thing is really easy, if I'm being honest, because all those parlays, a lot of the spreads, you were cashing with the top seed. Zach, I want to stick with you, because we do have the top seeds in here. We got Duke, we got Houston, we've got Auburn and Florida. Each of them had different sort of Elite Eight games. Which of those Elite Eight performances inspired the most confidence in you in terms of moving towards the Final Four and maybe the final?
Well, I love the way that Houston played, but I think they get the wrong opponent in Duke. But Kelvin Sampson, you got to give him credit for getting here once again. What he's done over the last 6 years, going to the Sweet 16, going to the Elite Eight, going to the Final Four. But they really impressed me in Indianapolis, going up against the disadvantaged crowd of Tennessee, also with Purdue. Their defense was top tier, which I think can hang with Duke for the majority of the game, but they were able to block shots against Tennessee, which you typically don't see, limited them to 29% shooting. So they'll get their chance again after losing to Duke last year. We'll see how they do with Kelvin Sampson.
Larry, same question for you. Is it Houston or is it a team like Duke?
It's got to be Duke. When you take apart Alabama by 20, Alabama makes 25 trays against BYU, and then can't really get anything to go. 8 of 32 from deep. They hold Mark Sears scoreless for the first 17 minutes, just dominant defensively and the most efficient offense in the nation. They've beaten their tournament opponents by 23.5 points per game.
Yeah, Mike, I want to switch gears a little bit here because I know that you were really impressed by Duke as well. But Larry's speaking to the defensive prowess of this team, and we saw what they can do on offense, especially in sets, out of timeouts. I got to ask you, because Duke, when you talk about Duke, Mike, you talk about Cooper Flagg. They certainly have a host of great players, Malawach, Knipple, and so many others. This is a complete team. But I don't hear Jon Scheyer's name a lot. So, Mike, I do want to ask you, when you're giving credit to this Duke team, are we missing giving Jon Scheyer maybe a little bit more credit than he's getting right now?
I think so, honestly. Ever since the transition from him to Coach K, he's been building for this moment, and he's done a great job putting this basketball team together. They're so smart. They're so disciplined. They play well on both ends of the floor. Does it help having a guy like Cooper Flagg? Yes, absolutely. But you know who I think it helps, honestly, is his teammates who are also going to be relatively high draft picks in the NBA, because they still get overshadowed and get to kind of live in the quiet a little bit more than they normally would if they were playing at another program. So I think that helps everything. And I think just Jon Scheyer's ability to manage all of that and keep everyone together has been very, very understated so far.
And Zach, I'll tweak the question a little bit. Should we be giving more credit to Cooper Flagg or Jon Scheyer?
I'd give more credit to Jon Scheyer, because you got to be on the recruiting trail right now with the NIL, and that's what his staff has done. Not just bringing in the top tier freshmen, but also bringing in the unselfish upperclassmen. These guys, and Malik Brown, Cyan James, and Mason Gillis, they just want to be there. They're going to give you what you need on the floor every single game. And Scheyer, he's got this team to play peak ability since early December when they beat Auburn. So they're playing excellent basketball, and it's because of Coach Jon Scheyer.
All right, let's move to some bets here. I got to ask you, Larry, I'm going to lead with you. Duke is plus 100. Sometimes, like some places you can find maybe a plus 105. I think BetMGM has this kind of toggling back and forth between the plus 105 and plus 100 to win it all. If you had to make a bet here, and you could choose the field, which would be obviously near even money as well, would it be Duke or would it be the field, Larry?
Right. I think the field is sitting there around minus 120 right now. And if the field had a healthy Janai Broome, maybe I would go for the field. But the way that Duke has been just so impressive throughout this tournament, the 3 top 10 picks, the transfers they plucked from Purdue and Syracuse and Tulane, and the way Tyrese Proctor is shooting the ball this tournament compared to last tournament when he went 0 for 9 as Duke exited. And, they shoot over 50% every game. They're just so efficient. I think it's Duke taking it down. I would play them even money.
Let's go rapid fire here. Mike, is it Duke at even money? Is that the play you'd make?
Yeah, it'd be Duke even money, or potentially just money line rollover, bet the money line, roll it over, bet it again, probably get plus 120 instead. Yeah.
Zach, same thing for you?
Yeah, same thing with me for Duke. And we even saw some books throw out minus 105, minus 110. That's how strong they think Duke is. And come on, Malawach, he's probably the biggest difference maker left in this tournament. 8 blocks over the last 3 games. We saw him change almost every shot at the rim from Alabama. Grant Nelson couldn't buy a layup. So Duke right now head and shoulders above the rest of the class.
All right, let's continue with the rapid fire. I will say we're going to have SportsLine model picks for these Final Four games later with Mackenzie Brooks. But Zach, 10 seconds or less, rapid fire. What's your favorite pick in the Final Four games?
It's going to be Duke over Houston. Like I said, Houston can hang with them defensively. I'm just concerned with them being able to score, in particular L.J. Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp, who can shoot you out of games. L.J. Cryer just 8 for his last 30.
Mike?
Duke against the spread. Same thing Zach said. I don't think Houston can score. And then Auburn's team total under, fading them scoring 80-plus points in this game.
Yeah, I like both of those. Larry Hartstein, close us out.
Yeah, Duke over 70.5, coming back at minus 125 on their team total. Shot over 50% in every game. Tyrese Proctor is 25 out of 37 in this tournament to go along with the big 3 first-round picks.
We're back on the early edge, and we got to close the show, Mackenzie, talking Final Four and what the model thinks about these 2 games. Obviously, Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston. But can I just ask you a question that, spoiler alert, I already know the answer to. I just want you to talk yourself a little bit in the SportsLine model. Now, everybody joins brackets. right? And the SportsLine model put their own bracket in. What percentile is that bracket in, Mackenzie?
Sia, that would be the 99.5th percentile of all brackets we're looking at here. And nobody wanted to listen to us with the chalk and the all four, one seeds in the final four. But here we are, over 99 percentile. So talk about the numbers, Sia. Talk about the numbers.
I mean, listen, I don't even have to expound upon 99.5 percentile, but that is a good lead into these games. I want to know what the SportsLine model has with their brackets, but I also want to know what they've got for these Final Four games. So let's start with Auburn and Florida. I believe this line over at BetMGM is still 2.5, with Florida being the favorite here. Mackenzie, your thoughts? Obviously, there's a total that's pretty high here as well. Your thoughts on how the model is addressing this game?
Yeah, we make the score Florida 78. What was that? 79, Auburn 78 here. So pretty in line with odds makers. It's funny, when we started this, we had Auburn winning this game, and we've slowly started to flip towards Florida with the 53% chance to beat Auburn here. And obviously we saw that happen earlier in the regular season, and that was without Elijah Mitchell here for the Gators. But we do see this slightly leaning Florida again. As far as the total, like you mentioned, it is pretty high. I would honestly attack the first half here and go with the first half under, just knowing the way Broome is not 100%. And if he's not coming out with his hair on fire, we know Clayton doesn't like to show his cards until the last 3 minutes of the second half here. So I don't think there's any reason that these teams will come out, with really firepower offenses. So that under 77.5 in the first half is probably where I'm going to be putting my money on this game.
Yeah, I like that under quite a bit. All right, let's talk about an under in a sense. We're not going to get as many points in Duke versus Houston, but we have Duke as about a 5.5 point favorite. Again, these lines tend to move, but they're not going to move much at this point. Mackenzie, talk to me about what the model thinks about Duke, Houston.
Yeah, we make it a closer game than odds makers. Duke 72, Houston 70. So again, you're seeing that lower total than the Auburn-Florida game here. This is 23-year-olds versus 18-year-olds, though, at the end of the day. And we do have to remember that with what we're getting with this game. So I would honestly maybe attack Houston in that first half here. We have, the rebounding margins about even. We have Duke outweighing them slightly in 2-point percentage. And we actually have Houston outweighing Duke in 3-point percentage, which is pretty crazy considering how many awesome 3-point shooters there are on this Duke team. That is Houston's way to stay in this. If they can get hot from deep, I think that's their best shot. Maybe looking at that Houston first half to cover, because you can see Duke, we see it a lot with these favorites, it's a close game at the half and then they really start to pull away towards the second end of that second half here.
We got about 10 seconds left, Mackenzie. Does the bracket have Duke winning it all?
Yeah, we've been Duke since day one. Easiest path to get out of their region to the Final Four. Florida with the hardest, and we definitely have seen that, although they're all here. Florida definitely had to fight for their life the most on the way to the Final Four here, and you saw Duke with just an easier ride.
All right, Mackenzie Brooks, thank you very much. And if you want some of that model talk, again, go to sportsline.com/join. And if you type in the promo code winners, you get 60% off the annual plan. And again, you can see Mackenzie and Mike McClure and Zack Cimini and Larry Hartstein and so many others, including me, on The Early Edge on the SportsLine YouTube channel every Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock. We'll see you next time on The Early Edge.